Karen mocked a black dad. His kid later tutored hers. The annual Willow Creek Estates Science Fair was a highlight of the community calendar. It was a chance for the neighborhood's brightest young minds to showcase their ingenuity, their creativity, and their dedication to the pursuit of knowledge. For the parents, it was an opportunity to beam with pride, to network with their fellow affluent residents, and to reinforce their belief in the exceptionalism of Willow Creek. Karen was, of course, a prominent attendee. She glided through the Wistica Hall, her designer dress flowing, her smile radiating practiced elegance. She was a longtime resident of Willow Creek, a former HOA president, and a self-appointed arbiter of all that was proper and refined. Her 10-year-old daughter, Tiffany, had a project in the fair, a meticulously crafted model of the solar system that Karen had admittedly played a significant role in creating. As Karen surveyed the various exhibits, her eyes fell upon a display that was different. It was a complex robotics project, a series of intricate circuits and whirring gears that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. It was the work of a young boy, maybe 12 or 13 years old, with bright, intelligent eyes and a quiet intensity. The boy's father stood nearby, watching with a mixture of pride and quiet amusement. He was a tall, distinguished-looking black man, dressed in a casual but stylish outfit. He wasn't someone Karen recognized from her social circles. Karen approached the exhibit, her smile faltering slightly. "This is quite elaborate," she said, her tone a mixture of curiosity and thinly veiled condescension. "Did your son put this together himself?" The man smiled, a warm, genuine smile. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "He did. He's been working on it for months. He's quite passionate about robotics." "Indeed," Karen said, her eyebrows arching slightly. "It's impressive. What school does he attend?" "He's homeschooled," the man replied. "I teach him myself." Karen's smile tightened. Homeschooled? That was unconventional. It was a world away from the prestigious private academy that Tiffany attended, a world away from the structured, elite education that Karen believed was essential for success. "I see," she said, her voice dripping with a subtle disapproval. "Well, it's certainly resourceful, but I'm sure it lacks the rigor of a formal education." The man's smile faded slightly. He had encountered this kind of prejudice before, the casual dismissal, the thinly veiled assumptions about the intellectual capabilities of black children, especially those who were homeschooled. He had learned to navigate these situations with patience and grace, but it still stung. "My son is challenged and engaged," he said, his voice calm but firm. "He's an exceptional student. I assure you, his education is quite rigorous." Karen scoffed, a short, sharp sound that conveyed her skepticism. "I'm sure you believe that," she said, "but homeschooling can't possibly provide the same level of academic excellence as a top-tier private school. The resources, the teachers, the connections, it's simply not comparable." "My son has access to all the resources he needs," the man replied, his voice hardening slightly. "And his education goes beyond textbooks and classrooms. He learns through hands-on experience, through exploration, through a genuine love of learning. As for connections, he's building his own, through his talent and his hard work." He gestured proudly at his son's robotics project, which was now attracting a small crowd of fascinated onlookers. Karen glanced at the exhibit, her expression a mixture of grudging admiration and stubborn disbelief. She couldn't deny that the project was impressive, but she still couldn't shake her preconceived notions about homeschooling, about the limitations of a non-traditional education. "Well," she said, her voice dismissive, "I'm sure he's a bright boy, but the real world is a competitive place, and in the real world, it's not just about talent, it's about who you know, where you went to school, who your parents are. It's about the advantages that a proper upbringing provides." Sure. The man's eyes flashed with anger. He had had enough of this woman's condescension, her thinly veiled disdain for his son and his educational choices. "My son will succeed on his own merits," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "He will not be limited by other people's prejudices or by their narrow definitions of success. He will forge his own path, and he will make his own connections, and he will do it with integrity, with passion, and with a genuine love of learning. He turned to his son, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I'm very proud of you, son," he said, his voice filled with warmth and love. "You did an amazing job." The boy beamed, his face glowing with pride. "Thank you, Dad," he said. Karen watched them, a knot of unease forming in her stomach. She had been put in her place, publicly and decisively, and by a homeschooler. She tried to dismiss the incident, to convince herself that she had been right, that the man was just being defensive. But deep down, she knew that she had been wrong. She had been judgmental, condescending, and utterly lacking in grace. But Karen was Karen, and Karen didn't like to admit when she was wrong. A few months later, Karen's daughter, Tiffany, began to struggle in her advanced math class. She was a bright girl, but she was facing a particularly challenging unit, and she was falling behind. Karen, of course, was determined to get her daughter the best possible help. She contacted the school. She hired a private tutor. She even considered enrolling Tiffany in an expensive after-school program. But nothing seemed to work. Tiffany's grades continued to slip, and her confidence plummeted. In desperation, Karen reached out to a friend, another Willow Creek mother, who had a reputation for being particularly resourceful. "My daughter is really struggling in math," Karen confessed, her voice filled with worry. "I've tried everything, but nothing seems to help. Do you have any suggestions?" Her friend hesitated for a moment, then said, "Well, there is someone I know who's supposed to be excellent at math. He tutors some of the kids at the high school, and they say he's a miracle worker. But he's a bit unconventional." "I don't care how unconventional he is," Karen said, her voice desperate. "If he can help Tiffany, I'll try anything." Her friend gave her the tutor's contact information. His name was David Walker. Karen frowned. The name sounded familiar. Where had she heard that name before? She dialed the number, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and trepidation. A man answered, his voice deep and resonant. "Hello, this is David," he said. "How can I help you?" Karen's eyes widened in shock. She recognized that voice. It was the father from the science fair, the homeschooler. She almost hung up the phone. The irony was too much to bear, but her desperation was greater than her pride. "Mr. Walker," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "This is Karen Mitchell. We met at the science fair a few months ago. My daughter needs a math tutor. My friend said you were..." "Very good." David paused for a moment. He remembered Karen. He remembered her condescending remarks, her thinly veiled disdain for his son and his educational choices. He had no particular desire to help her, but he was a kind and compassionate person, and he knew what it was like to struggle with a subject. He also knew that every child deserved the opportunity to succeed. "I am a tutor," he said, his voice neutral, "but I'm afraid I'm quite busy at the moment. My son is also a tutor, and he's very talented in math. Perhaps he could help your daughter?" Karen hesitated. His son? The homeschooler? The boy whose project had been so impressive? She swallowed her pride. "Yes," she said, her voice barely a whisper. That would be wonderful." And so it came to pass that Karen's daughter, Tiffany, began to be tutored in math by the son of the man she had once dismissed and belittled. The boy, whose name was Elijah, was indeed an exceptional tutor. He was patient, kind, and incredibly knowledgeable. He had a gift for explaining complex concepts in a way that Tiffany could easily understand. He also had a way of making math fun, of instilling in Tiffany a genuine love of the subject. Tiffany thrived under Elijah's tutelage. Her grades improved dramatically, her confidence soared, and she began to excel in math. Karen watched in amazement as her daughter blossomed, her initial skepticism replaced by a growing sense of gratitude and respect. One day, Karen drove Tiffany to Elijah's house for their tutoring session. As they pulled up to the curb, Karen noticed the house. It was a modest but charming home, filled with books, art supplies, and the warm, inviting atmosphere of a loving family. David greeted them at the door, his smile warm and welcoming. He invited them inside, and Karen found herself in a world that was far removed from the polished perfection of her own life. She saw Elijah and David working together, their heads bent over a math problem, their voices filled with enthusiasm and intellectual curiosity. She saw the close bond between father and son, the mutual respect, the shared passion for learning. She also saw the walls lined with awards and certificates, testaments to Elijah's academic achievements. He had won math competitions, science fairs, and writing contests. He was, by any measure, an exceptional student. Karen was humbled. She had been so quick to judge, so eager to dismiss. She had allowed her own prejudices and her own narrow-mindedness to blind her to the truth. And the truth was that this homeschooler, this boy she had once considered intellectually inferior, was a brilliant, talented, and extraordinary young man. As Tiffany and Elijah worked, Karen found herself drawn into a conversation with David. He spoke about his philosophy of education, his belief in fostering a love of learning, his commitment to providing his son with a rich and stimulating environment. He spoke with passion and eloquence, and Karen found herself listening with rapt attention. She realized that this man was not just a homeschooler. He was an educator, a mentor, a father who was deeply invested in his son's intellectual and personal growth. By the end of the tutoring session, Karen was a changed woman. She was no longer the arrogant, self-assured resident of Willow Creek Estates. She was humbled, grateful, and deeply remorseful for her past behavior. She apologized to David for her condescending remarks at the science fair. She admitted that she had been prejudiced and judgmental, and that she had been completely wrong about him and his son. David listened with grace and compassion. He had seen the change in Karen, the genuine remorse in her eyes. He accepted her apology, not with triumph, but with a quiet understanding. "Thank you, Karen," he said. "I appreciate that. But the most important thing is what you do now. What you do with this realization. Will you allow it to change you? Will you become a more open-minded and accepting person?" Karen nodded, her tears flowing freely now. "Yes," she said, her voice filled with a desperate sincerity. "I want to change. I have to change. I want to be a better person. I want to be more like you and Elijah." And she did. It wasn't easy. It was a long and arduous journey, filled with self-doubt, setbacks, and painful self-reflection. She started by volunteering at a local tutoring center, working with students from diverse backgrounds, learning about their challenges, and appreciating their unique talents. She also became a vocal advocate for educational reform, supporting programs that provided resources and opportunities for all students, regardless of their background or their learning style. She even established a scholarship fund to help underprivileged students attend college, hoping to create a world where every child had the chance to reach their full potential. Years later, Karen was a different woman. She was no longer defined by her wealth or her social status, but by her humility, her empathy, and her unwavering commitment to fighting for a more just and equitable world. She never fully escaped the shadow of her past, the shame of her initial encounter with David and Elijah. But she used that shame as a constant reminder of the person she never wanted to be again. And she became a close friend of David and Elijah, a true believer in their vision of a world where everyone had the opportunity to learn, to grow, and to succeed.